Welcome to Bio 250, Fall 2020. This is the time that genetics really matters to everyone. Turns out that COVID virus that's turned our world upside down, it's only about 30,000 nucleotides long. So we know how big an impact a single, not even organism, but a single piece of genetic information can have on our lives. We're going to talk about how that's possible as we go through the semester. Um, but to start, there are a number of topics that I will assume you've heard of in biology before, and I just want to give you a quick overview and my flavor of a few of these topics. The first topic is the overall topic of all of biology. Thus, from the war of nature, from famine and death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely the production of higher animals, directly follows. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. This, of course, is the last line of The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. As we think about genetics and as we think about biology more generally, it can become an overwhelming number of facts that we're supposed to be memorizing. There are a million kinds of beetles. There may not be a million kinds of beetles, but there's very close to a million kinds of beetles. There are 9,000 kinds of birds. There are 20,000 different genes and a lot more gene products than that in every human. So our question becomes, how do we organize and how do we think about life? And one of the best ways that I've found to think about biology is to think about it in terms of evolution. What was there to begin with? What was the starting material? How has life used that starting material in order to do all the things life is supposed to do? That is, get energy and matter, so eat, reproduce, and all life reproduces with the genetic code, at least life on Earth reproduces with the genetic code, and adapt to its surroundings. And if we start to think in those terms, hopefully we can put genetics into context and not just as individual facts we're trying to memorize. So what's evolution by natural selection? Natural selection is one mechanism of evolution. Evolution just refers to the change of organisms over time. The most famous mechanism and one of the largest mechanisms of evolution is natural selection. So here's an example. Here's how the story goes. In the 1830s, if you were collecting moths in England, you would find that there are two forms of this moth. There are black moths and there are white moths. And they live on the bark of trees in England. Now, if you were a moth collector or you were a bird or you were other predator, which moth are you going to find? Well, you're probably going to find the more obvious one, the black one. So it turns out that while black and white moths interbred and they had either black babies or white babies, they didn't there were many, many, many more white moths around than black moths. And then as society interacts with biology, the Industrial Revolution happened, and all those trees suddenly turned black because they were sootified. So all of a sudden, the black moths got an advantage. The white moths began to die out. Now, was that because the white moths realized they were terrible and started to commit suicide? No. It's because a selective agent, in this case mostly birds that were the predators, could eat them. So the ones that survived and sent their genes to the next generation were the black moths. And this is the basis of natural selection. There is variety within a species. Some individuals are more fit, that is, they're better able to survive in their environment. They leave more offspring because they survive. They can leave more offspring, and therefore their trait and their offspring have traits that are more similar to them. Therefore, their traits become more and more common as time goes on, as generations pass.